Welcome back to another episode of the Fifth Quarter Podcast. I'm Marcus Jones, the Bluff City Cowboy, coming to you live from Memphis, Tennessee. And thank you guys for joining me for this week's episode. I appreciate everybody that's tuning in. I see those views are starting to go up pretty quick, so thank you guys for that. For you guys that are joining us, make sure you get in the comments. Let us know where you're from. Let us know how long you've been a Cowboy fan. If you have any topics you want to discuss, this show is fueled by the fan base, so we appreciate any questions or comments that we do get. So before we get started today, I got a little bit of house cleaning to do. Today we are going to discuss half of the undrafted rookie free agent pool. Had a lot of undrafted free agents today, and I mean this offseason so far. The Mavs and the Timberwolves are playing tonight, so I may want to cut it off a little bit early. So I'm only gonna go through half the list tonight, and then we'll pick up on the other half next week. But I do have a lot of great content for you guys who are interested in knowing a little bit more about some of the undrafted free agents that we have signed so far. I'll also give you my opinion on how I think they can make the team, as well as the percentage of a chance that I think of actually making the final roster. So I hope you guys enjoy. And once again, show us few about you guys. So make sure you get in those questions, get in the comments, and let me know your thoughts. Yeah, Mendoza, I saw it just went to halftime. So I'm trying my best not to rush through it because I really do want to talk about these undrafted rookie free agents because I feel like this is a really good list. And there are a couple of guys I think have a very strong chance of not only making this team, but also being contributors in year one. So I see I got my guy Jeff joining. Jeff, thank you for joining us. See, we got Mendoza in the comments. As always, thank you guys for both tuning in. And anyone else who's watching for the first time, or if you're a regular, get in the comments. Let me know that you're there. And while you do that, also, if you haven't done so already, be sure to join the DC4L Facebook groups. This show is powered by DC4L. Got a lot of great giveaways coming up. I spoke with Amanda a couple of days ago, and there are a couple of giveaways that are going to take place inside of the group that you guys do not want to miss out on. So if you haven't joined the DC4L groups already, make sure that you go and join both of those groups. And then also go over to YouTube and find DC4L and hit that subscribe button. And while you're at YouTube, be sure to find me at Bluff City Cowboys. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. Help me on my path to 1,000 subscribers. So, got all that taken care of. Views are still going up. I see those likes are not matching those views. So if you could, please hit that like button also. Let's get those likes up as high as those views so that we can continue to grow the Fifth Quarter Nation. And I see I got my guy Jack Meeker in the comments as well. Definitely appreciate that. Mendoza, I believe you're a Pacers fan, right? So I'm pretty sure you were excited yesterday about the game you guys should have won, and you guys have a great opportunity of possibly stealing game 2. So, yeah. All right. Well, Jeff says he has a comment to make, but he'll wait to get to talking. So let's go ahead and get into the show. So we have, I believe, 14 undrafted free agents. So today I am going to go through 7, and then next week we'll pick up the other 7. And I'll be honest, the ones who I'm not talking about tonight, I haven't got a chance to really watch. So if it's not someone who I've already chosen to talk about tonight, there's not a lot that I can give you in terms of information. But the 7 I chose tonight are kind of the ones I think have the best chance of possibly making this team outside of 1 or 2. So let's go ahead and get into it. And we'll start with what I saw as the first undrafted free agent signing right after the draft. And that's the one that was the biggest position of need based off the fan base. That's running back Nathaniel Pete from Missouri by way of Stanford. Now, I'm hot or cold on this kid, but I like the traits that he has, I love. But the traits that he doesn't have, I think are gonna make it hard for him to make this team. So we'll talk about the games I watched first. Because as you guys know, I don't like just coming on here and just giving you guys a bunch of fluff. I don't do hot takes. I don't I don't talk about something unless I've done research on it. So I try to make sure for any player I can watch at least 3 full games to give you my opinion on it. Now, for Nathaniel Pete, it was difficult because for some reason he just did not play a lot of football. He had a couple of games where he had 10, 11 carries, but outside of that, most of his games played were 6 carries or less. So I wanted to go back and watch him at Stanford as well as at Missouri to get a very good idea of what this guy is. So I watched 2 games from 2020 in Stanford. I watched the big game against USC in 2021, and I watched one of his better games, 2022 in Missouri. Now, one thing I will say that stood out, the running backs that were in front of him were both very good, both in Stanford and Missouri. So I understand why he didn't get the opportunities that he got. I think the kid who was in front of him at Missouri was a third or fourth round pick this year. He's a true bell cow back, so I understand why that kid played a lot in front of Nathaniel Pete. But when you watch the tape, there are 4 or 5 things that just really stand out. Highlights or just regular runs. Number 1, explosive. This kid, in the schemes that he played in, they did a lot of shotgun. And from being flat-footed in shotgun, they did a lot of draws. So he was basically just starting off from his 2-point stance, hands on his knees, get the ball, and then have to accelerate. From 2-point stance and shotgun, as soon as the ball touched his hands, he was like a rocket. He shot out. And that's what you want from a running back, explosiveness. Um, he's also a home run hitter. I know a lot of you guys who saw clips of him, you've all seen that one big run against USC. Um, the big touchdown, 90 some yards. Most of his big plays, most of his rushes were like that, is good rushes. He may have 1 or 2 20-yard rushes, and then he may have 4 or 5 rushes for 2 or 3 yards. But the long runs were impressive. And like I said, I didn't get to see a lot of him single back behind the quarterback because the college game is just not dictated that way right now. So I'm looking forward to seeing him in the backfield, single back, or even in the eye with the fullback, getting the ball with a little bit of a head of steam behind what should be a very improved offensive line, particularly in the interior. Another thing I really like about him, his feet are always moving. Even when he takes on contact, he's still moving his feet through the contact. And what that tells me is this is the type of running back who will never fall backwards. He's always going to be moving forward because once you engage, his feet are going to keep churning. So it's not going to be a tackle and fall situation. Good trait for a running back. I talked about he accelerates quickly. Because his feet are always moving, he's going to break through arm tackles. There are some running backs who, if you touch them, it slows down their momentum and they sometimes fall. Not this kid. His feet are always moving. And when I watch them play, I don't normally like to give comparables unless it just stands out to me. But when I look at him and his running style, he reminds me so much of Tiki Barber without the wiggle because Tiki Barber was a very elusive running back. But in terms of um, the ball high and tight, um, arms and legs always pumping, always going forward, quick acceleration. You could put that blue and red jersey on him, and you'll think you're watching um, Tiki Barber in the open field. So those things I love about him as a player. Now, the things I don't like about him, number one, he has no wiggle. So he has no breakdown a guy. He has no juking ability. When he gets the ball, he's north and south. So that's not, in my opinion, is not a bad thing, particularly since I think we're going to go to an inside zone scheme. So in an inside zone, your running back is basically going to just read the center and the guard. So you're going to get on their butts, and then you're going to find a cut and you're going to go. Just like Jeff said, it's one cut and go. So the no wiggle doesn't bother me as much. Um, the second negative I have, poor vision. This kid has zero vision. If the play is intended to go in the B gap, when he gets the ball, the A gap can be wide open, nobody there. He's still running in the B gap. When they did try to run outside zone plays for him, where he gets the ball, he stretches it wide, and then try to find a hole and cut up, no. He just kept running wide, tried to hit the sideline. So for an NFL running back, having poor vision is going to be an issue. But like I said before, if the play is in the B gap, if the B gap is open, he's going to take it for 40. And I think that's going to work in his favor because I feel like once we get into preseason games, I think our offensive line is going to be very good in terms of the second team and the third team. Because for you guys who follow the Cowboys, you know they don't normally throw first round picks just out there. They put the veterans in front of them. If you saw the notes from the OTAs today, you would have probably saw that that Hoffman and Idoga were birthed with the first teams, while BB and Guyton were in the second teams. Don't worry yourselves about that. That's how Dallas operates. I wouldn't be shocked if BB and Guyton are playing with the second unit until the second preseason game. So I'm expecting both of them to probably be with the second unit in preseason game one. So if you're looking at preseason game one and your offensive line is for your second unit, it's Guyton, Bass, Hoffman, possibly Idoga, or the kid we drafted late, Thomas, and then Josh Ball or a Sim Richards or whoever at right tackle, that's a very good second unit. So if you put a running back like Nathaniel Pete, who runs a 4-3 and he hits a gap and he's trying to take it to the house, he's going to make some explosive runs in the preseason. And I think he's going to turn enough heads to give him an opportunity to possibly make this 53. Now, I don't think him in terms of a player by himself is a good enough running back to make the 53, but I think his attributes plus the strength of our second and third offensive line are gonna make him look so good that they're gonna give him an opportunity, or he's gonna look so good that another team may feel like they want to give him a chance. Now, terrible in pass protection. And I saw in the comments, um, somebody made Jack Meeker said Zeke's a teacher or just lead by example, and that's what Zeke will help him with. I mean, this kid is terrible. Like, you have to have vision as a running back to find the hole, but you also have to have vision as a running back to find the blitzer or the guy you're supposed to block. And he's terrible. I mean, if it's one guy coming in the C gap, he maybe still be looking right here, and that guy will just smack him and get the quarterback. He is terrible in pass protection. Now, getting in the pros and working on it, he might improve, but he's coming from a very long way, and I don't think he has enough time to be effective in a short period of time. So I think if we're going just off his traits, he's a practice squad guy. But if he gets in the right situation with behind the right second unit with a BB, Bass, and Guyton on the left side, and probably a Sim Richards at right guard, if there's a hole that opens up in the A gap or the B gap, he's going to have a couple of runs that just look way too good for you to let him go. And we both know Zeke is a trotter at this point, and Freeman is a trotting running back, 3.5, 4 yards a carry running backs. We have a running back that's capable of being explosive, but he weighs 160 pounds. And then we have Rico Dowdle, who, while he does have some explosiveness, I think Pete is more explosive, but I would still say Dowdle is the better overall running back. So Nathaniel Pete, pay close attention to him in training camp. We're gonna see some clips of him with the second unit breaking on some long runs, and he's gonna get the fan base excited. I don't know how he's gonna look with the first unit, but I think with the second unit or possibly the third unit, where I think he's gonna start off with, he's gonna turn a lot of heads, Cowboys fans. So just be on the lookout for that. But there might be a little bit of fool's gold in there. All right, guys, let's go to the second player we got here. Another player I just absolutely love. Um, and that's the tight end Brevin Spanford from Minnesota. And I'll be honest, every year there's a guy that I look at and I say, how in the world did this kid go undrafted? Last year for me, it was TJ Bass. And if you follow me on the old podcast, I talked about it for about a month. How did TJ Bass fall in our laps as, in my opinion, probably a top 20 tackle that correlated into a top 12 to 15 guard? I'm looking at Brevin Spanford's highlights, and I'm seeing I'm seeing a top 10 tight end. I don't know how he failed. I mean, he reminds me, and I hate to use this comparison because I know the fan base will go crazy, but the tight end last year from Georgia, I don't think he's as athletic as him, but everything else, Brevin Span's right there with him. So when I look at the tape, I watched 4 games. Jeff, you heard me talk about that all last year. That pick made no sense then. It makes even less sense now. Yeah, future tight end too. If you're going to 12 personnel, which is a two tight end, one running back set, Jake Ferguson's already established himself as basically the receiving tight end, the third receiving option on this team. So you're gonna need a legitimate blocker opposite him. Brevin Spanford, I don't think you're gonna find a better blocking tight end in the NFL. I mean, in the draft this year. 6'7", 270. If we don't like Josh Ball or Matt Waletzko, I wouldn't be shocked to see this kid put on 25 pounds and play tackle at some point. That's how good his blocking looks. I mean, he's out there trying to punish guys. Defensive ends, outside linebackers. Don't let a nickelback or a safety get in front of him. It's lights out. This kid loves contact. I talked about this a little bit with BB. He has one of those squatty stances, which tells me that he has good hip bend, and he also has very powerful legs, and he knows how to transfer power from his lower body to his upper body. When you have one of those stances like you're taking a squat, that lets me know you're about to bring some heat. One of those draft things that you guys in the future pay attention to. Pay attention to an offensive lineman stance. If he's in the stance like he's about to take a dump, you know he's about to bring some heat when it comes to blocking a defensive player. But yeah, I watched 4 games of Brevin Spanford, and I'll be honest, I could maybe see why he didn't get drafted because he got no stats. Minnesota is not a high-powered offense, so there were not a lot of opportunities there. But this kid just blinks. NFL, pro body. Everybody's in the comments talking about it. He run blocks like a pro already. Blocking is second to none. I mean, the dude just has it. But when I look at the tape, like I said, physical blocker. He blocks defensive ends and linebackers by himself. There were some situations where it was supposed to maybe be a double team with the tackle and the tight end. The tackle got whooped, and Brevin Spanford was like, "Don't worry about it, my guy. I got this." Blocking defensive ends one on one. The tackle, you just go find somebody else to block. I got this guy. Um, Great leverage. Um, he's a crafty route runner. I think he ran like a 4.7, which that's not elite, but it's not bad. That's average tight end speed. But you got to remember 6'7, 265, 270 running a 4.7. So he's a smooth runner considering his size. Because normally when you see guys this big, they kind of lumber around the field. But he's actually a very smooth runner. He's a crafty route runner. He knows how to find space and zone. He's really good on those release routes where it's kind of a block and then drag across the field. Of course, big body. He knows how to give his numbers to the quarterback to make an easy throw. Um, he doesn't have great hands, but he has good enough hands for a tight end. He doesn't make a lot of catches away from his body, but like I said, he didn't get a lot of opportunities, so it's really hard to say. But I mean, open field, he knows how to make space for himself considering his size. And you're not putting the linebacker on him because even with a 4.7, he's crafty enough to get separation. You're definitely not putting the safety on him because that safety that safety better not try to jam him. He's getting knocked in the next week. And there are a couple of plays where I watched him play and the team put him in the slot and the defense put a safety on him. And I mean, literally, the safety tried to jam him, and he just pushed him and knocked him back 4 yards, and he was wide open. So the kid comes into the NFL with the NFL body. He already has the NFL blocking. He's fast enough. At a minimum, he's going to be a core special team. And as an undrafted free agent, that's really all you need to get your foot in the door. If you can be a core special teamer, you have a shot to make an NFL roster over guys who may, on the surface, be more talented than you. So I know we like John Stevens from last year coming back off the ACL. I know we like kid from Arkansas. Apologize once I go live. Names will escape me, but both of those tight ends are both kind of speed guys, athletic traits. We look at them and think they're mismatches. But I think even though those guys are more talented, I think just because of the fact that this kid has the blocking already and he has the pro ready body, Peyton Hendershot, I'm sorry. John Stevens, Peyton Hendershot. Because this kid already has the blocking down, we have a number one tight end. So you don't necessarily have to have a guy who can get you 30 catches. Ferguson's gonna probably get 60 catches this year. So you don't need a tight end number 2 who's gonna give you 40 catches. You just need a guy who can go out there and block and can make an occasional catch when he needs to. Um, Schoonmaker's gonna get his chances because he's a second round pick. But when it comes down to that third spot, I think Brevin Span Ford has just as good a chance of anybody else. And if they decide to go down to a 4 tight end, he's 100% 4 tight end. He's making the roster. If we keep 4, there's no question he's making this roster. If they try to limit it to 3, he's gonna have some competition, but I think he'll probably beat out those other guys just because of the blocking and, the special teams ability because he's just a natural special teamer, I think. So far, I think we're 2 for 2. I also think going back, Nathaniel Pete, I know the rules are kinda wonky right now with the kickoff return, but if we need a kickoff returner, if Turpin were to get a bigger role as a wide receiver, Pete could go back there and be our kick returner, and I think he'd average 25 yards per return. I really like him. And Mendoza says feels like Luke is the de facto tight end 4. I could possibly see that. And I'll say this, despite Brevin Span Ford being 6'7", I've seen him do some H-back, fullback stuff too coming out of the backfield blocking nose tackles, kinda like we used to do with, Connor McGovern. I've seen him do a little bit of that in Minnesota too. So I know we like Hunter Luepke, but he may wanna watch his spot as well because that kid can do it. He can do it all when it comes to blocking. And he's one of those guys that we like to call first off the bus. So for you guys who play any high school football, if you remember back in the day, your coaches would always put the big guys, let them come off the bus first as a kind of an intimidation factor. Brevin Span 4 is one of those first guys off the bus type guys where you just let 6'7", 270 walk out there and let everybody just think, what are we going to do when we see this guy on the field? All right, guys. So that's 2 down. We got 4 to go. So next up, and again, I'm going to go in order of who I think can make the roster. So I think Nathaniel Pete, I probably should have swapped Ford and Pete, but I just feel like Pete during the preseason is going to make some runs so explosive, and he's going to make so many highlights just from north-south running. I think he's going to trick us, and he's going to make it hard on a guy like Deuce Vaughn at the bottom of the roster, or they may second thought bringing Royce Freeman on the roster because him and Zeke are pretty much the same guy. All right, so we're gonna go to player number 3, who I think has a solid chance to make the roster. And on this one, I'm kind of torn, but I just really like the player when I look at him with the limited amount of tape that I've seen. And that player is the safety from Nevada, Imani Johnson, safety from Nevada. Because he's from Nevada, it's hard to find a lot of tape on him. So I've really only seen 2 games. But when I watch him play, I mean, height, weight, speed, he's got it all. 6'2", 215, probably a 4.5 runner. To me, they played him almost entirely in the box. And he's a great in the box safety. He does not mind coming downfield and making the tackle against anybody. But when I did see him in coverage, I saw some smooth movement skills. I looked up his history because I was just wondering, like, a red flag for him, he didn't start a lot at Nevada. Like, I think he was a 5-year player. He didn't start until his last year. And then even with that, I think he only started like 11 of 14 games. So there's not a lot of starting tape on him. And it's unusual because when you look at him play, I mean, he looks like at a minimum, a bottom of the roster NFL guy. Um, like I said before, he plays in the box a lot, but when he does have to play out of the box, his movement looks smooth. He doesn't have tight hips. Normally, when you look at a safety that's an in the box guy, you usually see a guy who's playing in the box because he has tight hips and he's not able to turn. I don't see that with Johnson. He actually has really good hips. He's a smooth runner, and he tracks the ball well in the air. Now, the problem that I do see with him, he has an issue reading assignments. So if he is in space and there are a couple of guys running routes on his side, you can kind of see him get lost. So that is a concern. But when I watch him play, height, weight, speed, uh, physicality, physic- physicality, explosiveness, and the fact that, like I said, he didn't start for 4 years. And then his last year, he finally started for 11 of 13 games. Those 5 years he was on the team, I found out he was a core special teamer. So you got a guy who's coming in with 5 years of core special teams experience who has the height, weight, speed. So that means for these rookies like a Caden Carson or um, I'm trying to think of who else we drafted. Any of these defensive guys who come on the team from college, Leofow, um, guys like that who are trying to get some playing time on special teams, this undrafted kid is going to come in with a step above them because he's been playing special teams pretty much his whole football career. And on top of that, we have an opening at punter and jammer and gunner, I think, because I don't think Nashawn Wright's going to make the roster. So there's going to be an opening opposite CJ Goodwin, and I'm doing an early prediction. I'm penciling this kid in as one of the top candidates to fill in that spot because I know they have Mukwamu there as well. I think his best chance of making the roster is if he can beat out Mukwamu as that as that jammer gunner, and just watching him play, I think he could do it. So pay close attention to this kid in training camp. I don't think he's gonna flash in terms of defense, but just pay attention to those preseason games when you start seeing that number playing gunner, jammer, kickoff return, punt return, kickoff and punt. He's gonna be all over the field, I think, and I think because of that, he's gonna have a very strong chance of making this roster because we do not have a lot of what I would consider core special teamers on this team. We got a lot of safeties. None of those guys really play special teams. We don't have a lot of linebackers. The ones we do have, I don't think they were special teamers. None of our receivers, in my opinion, are special teamers outside of maybe Jalen Brooks. So there are going to be a lot of openings for those 4 to 5 guys that you need who are big, fast, explosive, and physical to fill those spots. We don't have a lot of them. I think he can come in under the rug and get one of those spots. Okay, so we go from one Johnson to another, and that is Jason Johnson, linebacker for UCF. Now, to be honest, I haven't watched the other linebackers yet as much as I want to, but early looks, I kind of like those smaller school linebackers more. It's just hard to find tape on them because the schools are so small. But this kid is from UCF. I put 3 games up here. These are the 3 games I watched in full. I could probably add in another game or 2 because I watched him play quite a bit at UCF. Now, kind of like what I said with Nathaniel P. The stuff that I like, I really like. But the stuff that don't think he's going to be good enough to overcome it and become an NFL linebacker. at least to make the roster year one. So the stuff that I like, the kid has great vision. He trusts his eyes. He can diagnose a play, he can see the hole, and he will attack it. I've never seen in 4 games that I watch him play, I never saw him make a bad read. If the running back was going in the C gap, he was right there with him, making the tackle. If the play was outside, he was there. If the play was backside A gap, he read it. He trusts his eyes, he sees it, and he attacks. Um, the problems I have with him, and again, good, very good downhill linebacker. If you're looking for a Mike, I think he fits that mold. If you're looking for a special team guy to be on your punt team or your kickoff team, I think that's how he makes the roster if he does, because we don't have a lot of linebackers, and the ones we have, I don't see core special teamer in them except maybe Leah Fowl. But if you watch the old shows, you know I think Leah Fowl is going to be the backup Mike. So I don't know what his special teams duties are going to look like. But the things I don't like about this kid, he's 6 foot, about 225. So he's a little bit undersized. And Jeff said, did he call plays? I would I would guess from looking at the tape, and you know how when you watch a game, and I talked about this with Leo Fowl, and this is one of the reasons I love him. When you watch a game, you can look at a guy in his helmet and you can see his head turning. And you can see the offense do something, and then that guy will point. That lets you know you can't see his mouth, but you know he's pointing because he's telling somebody something. That's when you know that a guy's a play caller. Or if you see the line shift and he's the linebacker who moves the offensive lineman, slaps him on the butt to go left or right, or he pushes the linebacker beside him to move, that's when you know a guy's a play caller. I didn't see a lot of that from him, but I did see some of it. So he may not have been the play caller, but there is some awareness there where he knows what's going on outside of what I saw from a Damone Clark, who basically looks like people are telling him what to do. I love Damone Clark, but I don't see play caller in him. Um, I don't want to say that about our other linebacker because I didn't see him enough in NFL, but I did watch him in college, and I'm talking about Overshown. I watched him in college. He was not the play caller in college. He was kind of doing along the lines of this stuff that Johnson's doing. He knew what was going on, but he wasn't a play caller. So good question, Jeff. So he's not a play caller. Um, he has a problem taking on offensive linemen. If an offensive lineman touches him, he's washed out of the play. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Offensive lineman gets close to him, you're not gonna see him in the play anymore. Um, but if he gets there in time, he makes the play every time. But that's at the college level. With the big boys who are a little bit smarter, a little bit faster, and just as big or bigger, I think he's gonna have some issues. He's a liability in coverage despite his size. Looks extremely stiff in coverage. And that's concerning considering he's a 6 foot, 220-pound linebacker. He's not good at taking on blocks. He's not good in space with running backs. Not very good in zone. I just don't see it. Um, unless because of the position he's playing, I think he has good enough traits to be a special teamer, punt team, kickoff team type guy. I think he has those traits, and that may sneak him on the 53 if we keep 6 linebackers, because right now I can only think of Overshown, Clark, Leah Fowl, Kendricks. So we only have 4 that I know are making the team. Um, who are the other guys to compete with? If we keep 6, he's competing with 3 undrafted free agents and Tyrone Wheat from last year, who's probably going to be converted to a defensive end. So only because we're going to have to fill 2 roster spots, and the 6th guy is going to have to be a special teamer, I think he has a chance to make the team. But if it comes down to him playing any defense, I don't think he has a shot. But I'm still giving him that slight opportunity for special teams. And you guys who follow me know I'm a big special teams guy. So I always am going to put an emphasis on paying attention to stuff like that. All right, so now we got 2 more guys. And I'll be honest, I don't think either one of them makes the team, but I'm more than welcome to listen to your thoughts about these guys because I'm sure you guys are very knowledgeable and you may be able to tell me something that I don't know or I don't see. So the 5th guy I'm going to talk about is, and it pains me to talk about this one, the big defensive tackle out of Illinois, Denzel Jackson. Now, if you're looking for just the prototype of a defensive tackle, this is the type of guy you're looking at. 6'3", 330. As you guys can see, he's not a sloppy, fat 330. He's got huge arms. He's got frying pans for hands, and he just looks like an interior monster. I mean, when I look at him physically, he looks like Ndamukong Suh. That's what I see when I look at him. But when I turn on the tape, that's not what I get, and that's my biggest concern. uh, Jack Mika said we're praying for miracles. Yeah, I'm with you right there. So when I look at him play, and I'll start off with this. He's from the island of Bermuda. So I believe we can get an international waiver for him year 1, where if we put him on the practice squad, he can be there, but he won't take a practice squad spot. I think that's how he's going to be on the team, even if he's above average, which I don't think he is. He's a project. I don't think he started playing football until junior, senior year of high school, but he's just so big and so physically gifted that he just looks good on the football field. So when I watch him play, number 1, the inexperience shows. He plays extremely high. Jeff asking about Alarcon, the tackle. I think you only get 3 years, Jeff, of eligibility with that waiver. I think he's used those 3 years up. As a matter of fact, I think last year he was just on the practice squad. I don't think he was the international guy. I think he was just a regular practice squad guy. Yeah, Cy Witherspoon, the league is trying to get more players from around the world. There's a lot of talent around the world outside the U.S. These teams are starting to get a lot of rugby players. You can look at the tackle from Philadelphia, who they turned into an All-Pro. I think the Chiefs just recently signed a guy from a rugby team that they're going to look at and think he's going to be a very talented player. So they're finding talent all over the place. So, like I said, 6'3", 335 looks like prototypical. He looks like Mozzie Smith too, when Mozzie Smith was 335. Maybe a little bit more body fat because Mozzie Smith was kind of ripped at 335 before he lost the weight again. Jeff says them treating him like that. Yeah, if you mean as an international guy who can practice with the team, he can make the practice squad, but he doesn't take a spot. That's where I see him at. But again, plays very high. He consistently gets blocked one-on-one by centers, which when you see a guy this height, weight, speed, that's concerning that he's getting blocked one-on-one by centers. If the guard just so happens to come over and join the party, it's over with for Jackson. They wipe him out of plays. It's almost like he doesn't have the awareness to see the guard coming. And again, that comes down to his inexperience playing the American football style and just not learning technique. And I've said this before in the past. College football does not prepare you for the NFL. College football prepares you to win college football games. There's a difference. There are some players who are just so athletically gifted that they just overcome the lack of training and coaching, and they're just elite players. And then there are some guys who go out and train on their own to make themselves better. But for the most part, college football teams are just looking for big guys who can come in, they can teach them the scheme, and they can just put enough players on the field to be dominant over the other team. They don't teach you how to be a pro. That's why when you watch a lot of draft analysis, you may hear about a lot of, for example, cornerbacks. You may hear a lot about cornerbacks who are grabby. That's because they haven't been taught how to use their hands, or they haven't been taught how to use their footwork so they don't have to be as grabby. So it sometimes makes the analysis of players difficult. But like a kid like this, you can tell he wasn't trained to be a defensive tackle. He's just bigger and stronger than everybody else on the field. And he played for Illinois. And that's what they like. But like I said, you double team him, he's done. But he has some sneaky quickness to him. Because I've seen a couple of plays where the center is blocking him one-on-one, and he hits him with that swim move, and he closes on the quarterback quickly. So he has some athletic traits. Now, the problem with that is when he does that, he has a tendency to pick a side. Um, Again, for you guys who follow me from the old podcast, when we did our undrafted free agent show with the big defensive tackle out of Kentucky that everybody fell in love with because he was 340. And I said the exact same thing. The same analysis I'm giving you for this kid, I gave it to you for him 2 years ago. And again, somebody please put the name in the comments. As you know, once I'm doing stuff live, so many names are popping in my head, I kind of forget. But yeah, but thank you, Jeff. Quinn Bohanna. Quinn Bohanna was probably closer to 350, but he had some sneaky quickness as well, and he had a tendency to pick a side. You can't do that in the pros because if you pick a side, that offensive lineman is going to let you have that side and wash you out, and then that running back is going to run right through the hole that you just left. So in college, it looks good because everybody's not as nuanced. But in the NFL, it'll cause you some real problems. And like I said, it picks a side. Nice swim move when he gets it off. But when he does in college, it looks good. In the pros, not so much. So for me, even though we are desperate for a big defensive tackle, I don't think this kid right now is talented enough to come in and be productive and help us in the interior. And like I always say, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong about what I see because I'm not the type of person who wants to badmouth a player and then continuously badmouth them and point out all of his flaws just to say I'm right. I'm not that type of person. If I say a player looks bad based off my analysis and he comes in and proves me wrong, I'm happy to say I'm wrong. But this kid is on that list. I just don't see it. I don't see how he makes the roster. He has a lot of work to do. And as much as you guys hate Mozzie and you don't respect Carl Davis as a defensive tackle, I would probably still put him fourth or fifth in the pecking order of our defensive tackles right now. All right, so we're at 50 minutes. I think I'm halfway through the third quarter, so I'll be able to watch the rest of the game. So I have one more player I want to talk about with you guys, and then we'll get out of here. And before we go, If you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat before we get out of here. We'll probably end the show right at 1 hour. So you got about 10 more minutes to get those questions or comments in about anybody I've talked about, any drafted guys, anything about training camp, anything you want to discuss. So the last guy that I'm going to talk about today is the wide receiver out of Northwestern, Cam Johnson. Now, when I watch him play, there's a lot to like in terms of the player when you watch him play. But when you look at the traits, he has no shot of making this roster. I'll give the good first. He's 6 foot 5'11", about 210 pounds, 10 pounds. He plays much larger than his size. He's a very good, he has a very wide catch radius. He doesn't mind making catches outside of his body. He has really good hands. He makes a lot of great catches in traffic. Um, he can be physical as a wide receiver when he needs to be. A very crafty route runner. He's a sneaky good route runner. You can look at him and tell that he's very nuanced in his route running, and he plays the game more with intelligence than athleticism. Um, some of the things I noticed when you watch him play, he had a career high in catches last year, but when you watch the games, the only routes he ran were hitch routes, 10-yard comeback, and slant, with the occasional fade route thrown in there. But primarily was those 3 routes. Now, if this was 2019 and we were under Jason Garrett would love this kid because he reminds you of every undrafted wide receiver that came through the Cowboys system back then. I almost feel like this is one of those picks where Jerry Jones is still looking back at some of the prior receivers that we picked up in undrafted free agency, and this kid reminds him of them, and he's wanting to try to recapture that. Jeff asked for an NFL comparison. Like I said, when I look at him, insert any undrafted wide receiver that was taken prior to 2021. So the kid like Aaron Parker, a kid that really stood out to us from Rhode Island, put up a lot of stats in college, came here and did basically nothing. What's the receiver's name? And again, we're live, so let me know. The receiver from 2022 for the Cowboys who ended up starting week 1. What was that receiver's name? I think that's a really good comparison for him. I'm trying to look up his name right now. I'm trying to think of it. I won't call him Ty Freifogel. I think Freifogel was a little bit better than him. What is his name? He's not Drummond. I'm gonna have to find that kid's name. But there was a wide receiver who came into training camp as an undrafted guy, and he ended up starting week 1 for the Cowboys. It may have been 20. I'm almost certain it was 2021. I can't think of his number. It may have been 17, but if you can remember which wide receiver was an undrafted free agent who started week 1, that's the guy. That would, to me, would be a good comparison for this wide receiver. But yeah, I just don't see it. The biggest problems is This new scheme is based off creating separation. They want shifty guys, they want fast guys, they want guys who can run drag routes and run away from the corners. They want guys who can run crossers. They want guys who can press the line of scrimmage, press the corner, and then put a foot in the ground and come back on that 10-yard comeback and make space and turn up field. He doesn't have that. He has a very big problem with creating separation for himself. The biggest problem he has is he's an old wide receiver. So you guys, Dennis Houston, thank you, Mendoza. That's the name. Dennis Houston is who he reminds me of. Undrafted guy, good enough to bring the camp. He'll probably look good in camp because what I was just about to say. You guys know how long CeeDee Lamb has been in the league? This receiver is only 4 days, not 4 years, not 4 months. He's 4 days younger than CeeDee Lamb. So you're looking at a guy coming into the NFL at 25 years old. He's been on 3 different college teams. He played college football for 6 years. So he's going to come into camp and he's going to look good because he's been playing football for a lot longer than the younger guys. And some of the stuff that those younger receivers have to learn, like Flournoy, he's going to come in kind of knowing some of those nuances on how to run routes. So I think he's going to come in and he's going to look good because of his age and his experience. But when it comes down to it, when it's time to play real competition, I don't think he's going to do enough to stand out considering he's 25 years old. So yeah, I think he has no shot. I think he'll look good if he's given an opportunity. Whoever's the quarterback for the third unit, which will probably be optimistically, you would hope Trey Lance takes over the number 2 spot in training camp, and Cooper Rush would be the third quarterback. If Cooper Rush is the third quarterback, he's going to look to this kid a lot because he's going to see the experience and the craftiness to get open. So I think that's going to make him look good, but I don't think he's going to look good enough to make the team. Honestly, I don't think he's going to even make the practice squad. So whatever you guys get a chance to see in training camp, OTAs, preseason, you better soak it in because I don't think this kid has a chance of being an NFL player. I think we're going to see him in the USFL in 2025. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got for you guys tonight. So these are my 6 undrafted free agents we talked about today. Nathaniel Pete, running back out of Missouri. I think he's going to have a really good chance to make this roster because he has something no other running back has. Brevin Spann Ford. If we keep 4 tight ends, there's no question he makes this roster. No question. So for you guys who are John Stevens fans, for you guys who are Peyton Hendershot fans, one of you guys are going to have to say goodbye to your guy because I don't think either one of them will be able to beat out Brevin Spann Ford as the 4th tight end. You have to hope they keep 5. So I think he definitely makes this roster. Imani Johnson, safety out of Nevada. I don't think he's good enough to make it as a defensive player right now. But if you want a guy who can play all 6 special teams, I think that's going to give him a huge advantage over everybody else who's on the 2nd unit, definitely over the 3rd unit. So if it comes down to a Nashawn Wright or this kid, I think this kid beats him out. If it comes down to, I almost want to say Mukwamu, but my fanhood will not allow me to say it. If Brody Crowell is still on the team, Tyler Cole, I'm sorry. If Tyler Cole is still on the team, if it comes down to Tyler Cole or this kid, I think this kid beats him out. Um, if it comes down to keeping 7 linebackers or keeping this kid as a 6 safety, I think this kid beats him out. Just special team purposes alone. So I think he's not gonna be splashy. You're probably not gonna hear his name if you're a Cowboy fan who likes to watch the ball and you like highlights. But I think he's gonna do enough in practice where special teams is gonna get him on this roster. Jason Johnson, once again, from a defensive standpoint, I don't think he's good enough to make the team. But we have to keep 6 linebackers. The 6th linebacker has to be a special teamer. I think he is good enough to be a special teamer year 1. So, if it comes down to him having to play defense, I don't think he makes the team. If we need a 6th linebacker to be a special teamer, I think he has a good shot. Next guy, Denzel Jackson. If we have the international waiver for guys, I think you can pretty much pencil his name in right now. If he's not eligible for that, I don't think he's gonna show enough to make the 53. So I would definitely look for him to be a practice squatter at best. Um, I think he has a good shot of making a practice squad because we don't have a lot of guys with his athletic profile. But I don't see him making the 53-man roster. And then last but not least, Cam Johnson. You can't be a 25-year-old rookie at a wide receiver position and make a team. So and you can't run a 4.6 either. If you run a 4.3 and you're like a if you run a 4.3 and you're a good return guy, you may have a chance like Cavante Turpin to come in and make a roster. But if you're 25 years old and you run a 4.6, your chances are pretty slim of making an NFL team. So, like I said, if he's one of your guys, you better watch as much as you can in OTAs and training camp because I don't expect him to be here for the long haul. So that's pretty much all I got for you guys tonight. I hope you guys got something out of it. I hope you made some notes of some of these players I brought up if you weren't familiar with them, so that when we get into deeper into mandatory mini camp and training camp, some of these names won't sound unfamiliar to you. And if you start hearing certain stuff about guys, good or bad, it won't come to you as a shock. I see Mendoza already getting me started for next week, saying he's got his eye on Josh DeBerry, the cornerback from TAMU. I liked him when he was at BC. So I would definitely go back and find a game at Texas A&M, and then I also try to find a game from Boston College in 2022. So I make sure I have those for you next week, Mendoza. So that's the first half of the undrafted free agents. Next week I will be covering the second half. It'll probably be about 8 or 9 guys. I don't know how much tape I can find on the quarterback, but I'll try my best. We got a couple of safeties. We got the corner Mendoza just talked about. We have 2 very small school linebackers. So I'm gonna have to do some digging to find something on them. But if you got anything out of this show and you want to hear more, be sure to join us next Wednesday night at 8:30 Central Standard Time for another episode of the Fifth Quarter Podcast, where I will be doing part 2 of my undrafted rookie free agent breakdowns. We'll have a little bit more information coming out of voluntary OTAs. So we will have some stuff to talk about that. We'll be getting closer and closer to real football. And I actually expect us to probably make a signing or two because we have, I believe, 4 roster spots on our 90-man roster. So this week, we get a chance to look at the rookies. We get a chance to look at some of the second and third year guys who are filling in at number 1 and number 2 spots. So if the team feels like a guy in the very early stages isn't showing what they think, that's when they start to go to the fourth wave of free agency and they start filling in some more roster spots. So I expect by the time we come back here next week, we will probably have at least one or two signings, and I will discuss those guys as well. So make sure you guys find me next week. If you haven't done so already, make sure you go to Bluff City Cowboys, hit that subscribe button. Be sure to stay locked in with the DC4L Facebook group and YouTube channels. There's a lot of great giveaways, a lot of great content on there. And as always, let's go Cowboys. Hope you guys enjoyed what you saw, and I will see you next week for another episode of the Fifth Quarter Podcast.